Mel, everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everyone, Cantonese Cat here, monthly chart of Mara. We're around a little bit more over midway of April. So this is not a finalized candle yet, but so far over the last few months, it's been pretty obvious in terms of what it's doing. It's been range bound between two volume shelves, one big volume shelf right up here, the other volume shelf right down here. So far we've tested kind of the bottom range of this big volume shelf down here, and so far we've bounced. And it's just been going up and down, up and down. The top part around here is probably around the low 30s. The bottom part here is around mid-teens, and just been range bound between these two levels, building up tons of energy. While it's been doing that, now I'm going to show you a little bit more clearly here on the weekly chart. While it's been doing that, you can see that the volume when it buys goes up, when it sells goes down. So far over the last few months, just been consolidating sideways, and the volume's been going down. So all this is basically kind of meaningless price action. And the primary trend since the January of 2023, you can even argue December of 2022, has been going up. Overall, if you look at the monthly structure, it still looks like it's just back testing this whole area of breakout as support. And so far, it seems like it back tested a couple of times, and so far it looks like it's been holding. So there's no surprise in terms of the structure. The structure still looks very bullish. The volume is also consistent with this being a bullish structure because it broke out above this whole area right there on high volume and is back testing over the last few months on relatively lower volume. There are a few things over here at this consolidation area that really reminds me of the consolidation area over here between August through October 2020. One of which is the fact that the price kind of goes sideways, if anything, kind of went a little bit lower, formed a little bit of a bear flag over here, while you actually see that institutions actually been continuing to accumulate throughout this period of time. You can see that over here the last 6 months or so around 2020, whale accumulation continues to go up. Price actually consolidated here for quite some time before bursting through. I think we're seeing a very, very similar setup over here where whales started to accumulate over the last 6 months, and price just kind of been consolidating over the last few months over here. So a lot of energy has been being built up, and it's not just the whale fund inflow that's similar between these two areas. If you look at Ichimoku Cloud on the monthly, you have the Tenkan line, which is the red line right there. You have the Kijun line, which is the blue line right there. They cross right over here around the same region. Price went underneath that a little bit before powering it through within a couple months of this cross. We just had a very similar cross of the Tenkan line crossing over to Kijun. The leading line is crossing over to the lagging line. And that just happened about 2 months ago. And so far, price is a little bit below both of these averages over here. Kind of like what we're doing over here, consolidating, building a bunch of energy over here. We also see during this period of time, there's also a declining volume over here too. And we also see during this period of time, there's also a declining volume over here too. So this consolidation can lead to a big move, either up or down. I have a pretty strong feeling that it's probably going to end up being up based on, again, the whale accumulation pattern. I have a very strong feeling that this is going to end up being up, as well as just the volume accumulation pattern, where when price goes up, volume's up. When price goes down, volume's down. So all of this is very much consistent with this most likely being a reaccumulation, very similar to over here. Another thing that also makes it look very similar is the Bollinger Band. If you look at the Bollinger Band over here and here, you can see that right now we had a little bit of a squeeze right there and expansion. There's a little squeeze right there and expansion. And you can see the 20-month moving average is just median yellow, orange line over here. It's starting to curl up over here. With consolidation, price stay above this 20-month moving average here for quite a few months before bouncing up. You can also see very similar thing. There's a significant trend change right here on November 2023. And the 20-month moving average has been curling up, with price staying up above the 20-month moving average for several months, building up a lot of energy, potentially to push price up a lot higher whenever the Bollinger Band decides to expand. And when it expands, it could be very, very powerful, and price could potentially get dragged up a lot faster whenever a Bollinger Band ends up expanding. But that just hasn't really happened yet. So those are monthly things that I've talked about in the past. If you would actually pull up the weekly, there's a couple of developments here that are very important that I'd like to talk about, even though they're on lower time frame. One thing that really stand out is just how this week has closed. Today's Friday, the candle is closed. You can see a very, very bullish hammer bottom over here. We saw also a very, very similar hammer bottom over here at the cycle low. Like this is the low for the cycle. And if you see that this hammer, bottom over here and this hammer bottom over here happen at a little bit relatively different volume, it's quite interesting. Over here, it seems like the selling volume just completely exhausted. If that's when it bottomed, right? Over here, it seems like there was just increased buying pressure coming. You can see this whole downtrend here over the last 6 weeks before that. It's just been going down, and you finally get enough, seller to get exhausted. And the seller is trying to bring it down further. It's just not able to, and you end up having some relatively increase in buying volume and form a very, very nice bullish hammer candle over here. Is that going to be a guaranteed bottom? No, but it certainly points to be a pretty good bottom if it's going to form one. A couple of things too. One is that there's a gap down here. It's not going to be closed until it gets down to about 13.7. Right now, the price had gotten as low as like 14.18, but it hasn't really quite gotten down to this level quite just yet. Is this gap going to close? Based on looking at this, potential hammer bottom, it really doesn't look like it's going to be the case. I have a feeling that this could be the bottom, and we could potentially just end up running up from here, depending on what the volume shows, right? If anything, I think this whole thing has been a range, right? The top part of the range is around like the low 30s, bottom part of the range is around the mid-teens. And when you see a range, what traders are going to do, they're going to trade this range. They're going to buy at the bottom of the range, they're going to trade it up. And then when it gets to the top of the range, they're going to try to trade it down. Throughout the entire time, traders are going to try to bring as much volatility as possible for this stock, while institutions are also going to try to take advantage of this opportunity to try and reaccumulate and try to buy as much as they can right down here at the lows. So what you end up doing is the traders are causing volatility while institutions are setting a floor price for this. If you look at the data from fintel.io, currently the institution ownership for Mara is about a little over 40%. I think it's like 42% or so. So institutions are coming in, and if you look at fintel.io data too, you can also see that they're also accumulating. Like there's no doubt that they're accumulating. So there's a lot of buying pressure underneath down here at the bottom of this range. And whenever you're going to end up building enough power over here, which I think we're starting to, because we really have a lot of sellers that are already leaving, and you already have a pretty decent hammer bottom over here. I think there's a good chance that this might be it, and we might go up. There are a couple of confluences over here too, in terms of support. One is that it's at the bottom of this volume shelf, at this bottom of this trading range. That's very, very important. The other thing is too, if you look at other indicators, how it kind of bounced over here. One way that we look at is the weekly moving averages. It's still a bull trend, 20 over 50 over 100. You can see that it bounced from 50 and just kind of bounced back up, right at the bottom of this range right here, which provides pretty decent support. 50 is still pointing up, and served to be a pretty decent support over here. So that's one way to kind of think about the support. The other support is the anchored volume weighted average price. I'm going to point out one thing that I was showing you on X, or formerly known as Twitter, is this indicator basically tells you if you use the indicator, if you pick it, and then you just pick any point of price in the past, it's going to show you kind of like a volume weighted average price for the people that have bought it since at that point. So if people have bought it, if you calculate everybody's average price since at that point right there, most people have still in a profit, because this is a bull trend. And when this is a bull trend, when most people are still in a profit, the selling pressure is not going to be as great. When most people are at a loss, you might actually end up having a lot of people trying to sell at resistance. But so far, that's not the case for Mara. It's got a pretty nice trend, mostly forming higher highs and higher lows. And the average price right now is right around here, around like 15.4, 15.5 or so. And it served as a pretty decent support. Initially, I pointed this out. I was like, yeah, I think it's going to find support here over the course of like this whole week. And price, sure enough, the price like completely tanked underneath it. I was like, never mind, I'm not that great. I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. Next thing you know, price over the last day or two really bounced back above this AVOP level over here. So this actually, a lot of times, if you draw the right way, if you draw it from very, very important pivot points, it can actually give you some pretty important, support or resistance level. It seems to be a pretty decent support level here so far. Now, if you look at the weekly Ichimoku cloud, it's probably not going to tell you too much over here. But if you look at the super itchy cloud, one thing I did see is that it bounced from the bottom of the cloud and it formed a hammered candle, bottom candle right here, which is a very, very nice back test of the cloud. Like basically what happens is the cloud serves as resistance, the super itchy cloud serves as resistance, and then it serves as support, right? It bounced once, back test, now back test it twice, and so far it's finding support. If it's finding support, it's going to end up going up higher. We did end up having a little bit of a bearish crossover here, but I think this might just be a little bit of a noise because price just been kind of oscillating nonstop over the course of like a whole year. So I'm not going to pay much attention over here to this bearish cross right here between the weekly Tengen and weekly Kijin. And as far as I'm concerned, that's just more or less just noise. The key thing though is that overall, even though the monthly doesn't look like it, you still have an uptrending 20-month moving average, and price is still on the upper part of the Bollinger Band on the monthly. And on the weekly, there are a lot of very positive development that's being developed. So I'm happy that, we're in this. I don't want to celebrate today went up 10%. This means nothing. These are small moves. These are not the kind of moves that I'm trying to capture. I'm trying to capture the big move that I think is going to come with time due. We will see. I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about another one just to kind of make it a 1-2 combo, because this stock really looked very, very similar to Mara, which is Bitfarms. Bitfarms' monthly chart is essentially very, very, very similar. If you look at the volume shelf for Bitfarms, you're going to see that it's basically kind of range bound between these two big volume shelves over here. And so far, it's finding support at the bottom part of the volume shelf, right? And it's basically forming a bull flag. It's also back testing this, breakout over here. The breakout also happened on high volume, and the back test also is happening on low volume. So all of this is very, very similar between this and Mara. And to be completely honest, looking at the Ichimoku cloud, you also had a bullish cross over here. Price is also underneath both the Tengen and Kijin. And if you also are looking at the Bollinger Band, it's a very, very similar appearance between Mara and between Bitfarms, where price just kind of bouncing about the upper Bollinger Band, but right now it's going back down here, back test some of these other things. So there's really not much difference between the two, which is not a bad thing because they are both, major miners, and they're both representing some very, very similar pool of liquidity, right? If you look over at the Black Cat fund flow, you can see also a very similar pattern where you're increasing well inflow as you do over with Mara, right? So far everything is looking aligned, and again, price went sideways and down a little bit, even though well inflow continues to oscillate upwards. So there's a lot of discrepancy, a lot of divergences that could be in play over here. It's a pretty similar type situation. If you look at a weekly, it might be a little bit more obvious here too, right? This week we had a pretty nice bottoming looking candle with pretty decent volume after about 8 weeks of straight down. On declining volume, we finally have a pretty decent bounce, and this bounce looked like there is a possibility that this could be a bottoming type, formation. This is kind of how Bitfarm formed the bottom over at the cycle low over here too. So a couple other indicators to to look at if you pull up the weekly moving averages, which is going to be over here. You can also see that it bounced at 50, just like Mara did, right? And if you also look at the Ichimoku cloud, again, it's not going to tell you too much. If you look at the super itchy cloud here on the weekly, you can see that price get dipped down, and it kind of is trying to bounce above the cloud right here, right? So far it's kind of the near the top of the cloud right here. But if anything, it's actually a little bit, price to close a little bit above the super itchy cloud. So they're basically doing very, very similar things between Mara and Bitfarms. You did have a little bit of a bearish crossover here, but again, price just been kind of oscillating around here, so I'm not going to pay that much of a mind there. But yeah, these two are very, very, very similar. I'm also going to try to see if I can draw the AWOP from the cycle low and kind of see what we're getting. That's not it. I'm going to try to do the AVOB over here and see what we're getting. Now see, Bitfarm is not as powerful because most people are actually underwater right now. And initially this was going to serve as a little bit of support, but it kind of broke down below the support. So I do think that there's a possibility Bitfarm might lag behind Mara because of this reason, and also it just doesn't look as strong in general. But it has a very, very, very similar look to that. I do think a couple of things about Bitfarm here that are quite promising. One is you do have a very, very nice hidden bullish divergence between price over here and the unbalanced volume is shown here. So this could actually serve as a pretty decent bounce upwards. This is something that you capture whenever you capture like a bullish divergence. This is in this particular case is a hidden bullish divergence. If you capture these kind of hidden bullish divergences, it just basically means that there's a lot of bullish momentum that is being built up. It doesn't matter if price goes down, but usually what ends up happening being the next move is going to be a pretty decent move upwards. And this hidden bullish divergence has been building for like several months now. And it's been consolidating. Whenever it's going up, it's going to high volume. Wherever it's going down, it's going declining volume. So all of this right here is kind of reflected over here too, in terms of the unbalanced volume. It's basically telling you that, hey, something's not right here. I have a feeling that because of the volume profile over here, this whole downtrend right here could be more of an accumulation than anything. And that means that price could potentially have further room to go up. Let me just check real quick in terms of the RSI. If you pull up the RSI, which is a momentum indicator, if you're trying to find some divergences over here, you can also see some very similar divergence, like price has been going up like this, but RSI has really been just completely reset back to normal, right? I mean, RSI was up as high as like the 70s and the 80s, but now RSI is actually all the way back down to like the 40s. So you have a little bit of a, very, very nice hidden bullish divergence over here too. And that's also something to consider, between the unbalanced volume, between the RSI momentum indicator divergences. These hidden bullish divergences, generally they work out. Like generally, whenever energy starts to build up to a certain extent, they generally work out. So I don't have an example here for Bitfarms to show you how the hidden divergence had worked out in the past, but I could show other charts in the future to kind of let you know. Anyway, I just want to go through these two stocks here real quick. Thank you very much for listening. Happy post halving. Have a good one. Bye.